Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Portland Children's Levy Allocation Committee meeting. This is our first meeting of calendar year 2022. It doesn't seem like that, but it is. I'm joined today by my committee colleagues, and we're all kind of getting on the Zoom as we speak. So why don't we just go around and say hello. I'm Dan Ryan, City Commissioner, City of Portland. I'm going to hand it off to you, Tracy. Tracy, I just wanted you to say hello. Did you hear me?
Oh, sorry. I heard my name. It was kind of choppy. Sorry. Hi. Did you just want me to say hello? Introduce myself?
Yeah, we're just doing introductions. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Tracy Rossi, and I'm so thrilled to be on the allocation committee of the Portland Children's Levy.
Hey, Commissioner Vega Peterson. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jessica Vega Peterson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Multnomah County Commissioner for District 3.
Hello, Mitch.
Everybody, Mitch Orniker.
And Felicia.
Hello, I'm Felicia Tripp, and I am thrilled to be the county representative for the Children's Levy.
Thanks, great to have everyone here. We're also joined by Levy staff, and that includes Erica, Joel, John, Meg, and Lisa. Thank you all for joining us today on live stream. And with that, before we get started, let's approve the December 14th minutes. I'm sure everyone had a chance to read the minutes. Would anyone like to offer a motion?
I motion to approve.
Oh, second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, that's a unanimous vote on the minutes. Okay, moving forward. At this point, it's always good to check in to see if there's anyone here for public comment. Meg, Lisa, do we have anyone signed up for public comment today?
Hi, Commissioner Ryan. No, not at this part of the agenda. There is someone signed up for one of the later agenda items.
Sounds good. With that, then let's move on to the audit report. We're going to start today with the Levy's annual compliance audit. I think we're joined today by Tanya Moffett, who will present the report from Marina and Company. Tanya, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Take it away.
Good afternoon, committee members. We are pleased to present the compliance examination for the Portland Children Levy. We issued our report, which contained an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the highest level of opinion that we can give on this type of report, on February 23rd, 2022. Our opinion is limited to the compliance requirements outlined in ballot measure 26-197. To ensure compliance with the measure, we assessed the adequacy of the levy's internal controls. We tested the levy's administrative expenses to ensure that they were at least less than 5% of the cumulative tax revenue, and we tested the levy's administration of grants and grantees' compliance to ensure reimbursements were allowed and in line with approved budgets. During the course of the examination, we found that internal controls appeared adequate and provided a sound structure for processing of administrative expenses and grant reimbursements. The total administrative expenses were less than the 5% of the cumulative tax revenue by $741,000, and all grantee reimbursements were allowable and within the approved budgets. There were no restrictions or significant difficulties placed on my team when we were doing this examination. There were also no disagreements with management, and we had no recommendations based on the current year's examination. Does anybody have any questions on the report or about what we did? We really want to let you know that we appreciate being able to work with Levy staff. They got us the information very quickly and promptly whenever we asked for anything, and it was a very smooth examination this year.
Well, Tanya, it's nothing like coming to a meeting and giving all good news. So thank you for being here. Are there any other questions, or do we have any comments? Has anyone signed up for public comments in this section of the agenda?
Thanks for asking, Commissioner Ryan, and no one has signed up for public comment on this item of the agenda.
Great. So if there's no questions from my colleagues, is this a vote? We just approve it. We just are really happy with the news that we received. Okay, great. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Tanya. You really start us off with some great news to begin the meeting.
You're welcome. Have a great afternoon.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Now, really, congratulations, staff, for being such good stewards with the public's money. That's you don't earn audits like that very often. So it's a wonderful moment. I want to congratulate Lisa and her team.
And especially John Kelly.
There you are, John, getting some credit where it's due. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, we have some very special guests joining us, and we have 4 grantee partners providing early childhood services who will share reflections on service delivery. Meg will introduce our speakers, and I'm going to have you take it away, Meg.
All right, sounds great. Let's see here. Thanks, grantees who are joining us today. And they are settling in here to the Zoom meeting. And in a little bit, when it's their turn to speak, they can unmute and hopefully show their video too and share with you. So the first speaker we have is from the Black Parent Initiative, Tamara Mays. And she will be sharing about, so all the grantees today are early childhood. And I'm starting with our youngest, sort of the services that we fund among these 4 grantees that are prenatal to very early years in early childhood. And then a little bit further into infant toddler development. And then we have 2 programs focused on preschool, although one of them hasn't yet joined us. So if something came up and she's unable, then it will, so be it. But Tamara Mays from the Black Parent Initiative will speak to us first about their work with the Together We Can program. And Erica Hernandez with Portland Niños Hacienda CDC will speak next. And then we have Robert Cantwell, Head Start Director with Portland Public Schools. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tamara. Thanks for being here.
Hi. So good afternoon. I'm Tamara Mays. I'm the program manager with the Together We Can home visiting program with Black Parent Initiative program. So our program works with children 2 months to 5 years and entering into kindergarten. So what we do is that we provide the education and the training on parenting support services that help strengthen cultural identity and practices for our parents. We focus on strengthening child development milestones and parent-child bond, creating safe and healthy family environments, promoting the family's healthy engagement. So we really look at the parent and the children being able to engage together. And then the goal is to reduce the infant mortality rate in the Black community. So my home visitors and my team is very passionate at what we do. We go into the homes and we work with families. And so I said already that we work with children at the age from 2 months all the way up to 5 years old. So the home visitors go into the home. Currently, because of COVID, a lot of we're letting the parents have their actual comfortability. And so we've been able to conduct home visits either virtually or going in person. We meet with the families depending on the time frame, about an hour to maybe like an hour and a half. And we identify developmental milestones with the parents. One of our major goals is trying to help the parents to identify that they are their children's first teacher and their children's greatest influencer. And so we do a lot of modeling with our parents. We do a lot of early education assessments, making sure that the parents have the tools and the success to be able to support their children through going into school, as well as to further their education and being culturally specific within their community. We provide a lot of parent-child connect activities. We've done a couple of activities this past year where we did Zinger Farms, which is off of in Gresham in Foster Road, where we combined and collaborated collaborated with Singer Farms and did a cooking opportunity for our parents and our children. And so that was amazing to see parents and their children engaging together, children cutting vegetables and having the safe knives, allowing the children to go out into the actual farm, and parents working with their children on just identifying. We had one kid that pulled out a actual carrot, and he didn't understand that a carrot came from the ground. Blueberries. Kids being able to eat blueberries and thinking, okay, these aren't blueberries because they didn't come from the store. And so really being able to teach our parents and their children healthy eating. We just completed in February, our CEO facilitated a Afrofusion dance class. And so we had about 7 families or 7 individuals, at least about 4 young people that joined on. The youngest probably being about 4 years old. The oldest was about, I think, between 7, well, maybe she was 7, and she came to support her siblings, but she was on the call every week. And so we did that, every Tuesday through the month of February. Another one of our biggest events we did a Friendsgiving dinner, and this was in November. We actually invited all our families to come. They got dressed up, and we provided a community dinner. And so there was dancing, there was music, but it was a time where the families got together and we got to have dinner together. And that's something that a lot of families right now during COVID, it's really been a challenge in some situations because either their parents are always home or they're not home. And so just giving them that time to be able to dance and laugh and know that a meal was provided for them. We had a photographer that took professional pictures. And so all of our families were presented with their pictures. Another opportunity that we had was take our kids out to the pumpkin patch. So currently, right now with the TWC program, we are actually serving 30 families, and that's about 40 individual children. And just having an amazing time with our families right now. We're concluding on Wednesday, the first of our 6-week series of New Year, New You. And so those moms are coming on every Wednesday. It's been 6 weeks. Those moms have been showing up. We've been having between 14 and 16 moms coming on virtually for 6 weeks. And we've just been talking about how to love yourself. Some of the basic mental health tools some things that we take for granted and some things that have been tested during COVID, with the goal of being able to support our parents. And then I'll end with, we've had a couple of events where we've had vision boards. So we've had parents come on and we provided them with the actual tools where they've sat on our call for about an hour, and we all just brainstormed on creating a vision board, what they're looking for their children. We did one on Valentine's, what was your dream for your children? Okay, so what does that look like? What do you aspire for your children? We had one mom that had 7 children, and she literally shared with us that she wakes up every morning and gives each one of her children, all 7, a different word of encouragement. That was amazing that this mom does this every morning to all 7 of her children. And so again, just saying thank you for this opportunity to share with you, my passion in working with our parents and our children and my team. We love working with our families and doing what we do because we know that we're modeling this for our parents, and we know that it's going to be a great success for our community as well as our families. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tamra. I want to give an opportunity to Linda Bryant-Daka, who just joined also from the Black Parent Initiative, to speak a little bit about the doula work that the program offers. So Linda, I'm going to turn over the microphone to you. Thanks for being here.
Hi, my name is Linda Bryant-Daka, and I'm the manager of the Sacred Roots Doula and Mobile Lactation Services program. So we're a program that focuses on providing comprehensive maternal and child health services to our families. So what does that mean? So we provide support during the prenatal, during the actual birth process, to be there to support a mother, whether she has a partner that's there or a family member. We're there lending support. During the prenatal phase, we also give education about the changes to her body, anticipating infant care, and the different issues that come up. If she has any health risk factors, to give more of an explanation of how that can affect the pregnancy, and and giving her supportive solutions. And then during the actual birth, whatever a mom deems as the type of birth that she would want, supporting her in those decisions, allowing her to know that she has options to have those different births, and being a witness to, the different ways that some of our clients are treated in the hospital situation, in at visits. Also, being there for moms in the postpartum phase, being there at the time of birth can help a mom initiate breastfeeding. And so that's a new component of our program where we've enlarged our whole breastfeeding focus. So when I first started out with the program, I had already came in as a lactation consultant. So I was providing services myself, but we realized there was more of a need. A lot of our moms were not continuing with breastfeeding because they felt they didn't have enough support. And one person wasn't enough to do that. So we have a partnership with the Multnomah County REACH program. And so we were able to provide those services, clinical services to moms when they leave the hospital. We go to their homes and provide services just as we do doula services. So we're helping moms to continue and to increase the duration of breastfeeding. So this past year, we saw 150 and supported 150 moms in births. And so we also have a 98, 99% breastfeeding rate, initiation rate. So we're working on our duration rates. We've beefed up our postpartum classes to make it more feasible for a woman to have that support during the postpartum phase, where we have a lot of issues with infant, and maternal mortality and morbidity. So we think that we're going to continue to grow our program and to make a difference. And when I look at what I'm most passionate about, I would say the whole program, because when you see a mom go from that part of her life where now she's pregnant and she can accept that pregnancy, and then she can deliver a healthy baby, she can go on to breastfeed that baby, and the health benefits for her to understand that, and for her baby, we're helping the health of not only just that duo, but actually the family and the community. Because you have a mom who has less time out of work, you have a mom that is going to increase her health benefits, and a baby that has a great start with bonding and better health. So that's where my passion lies, in looking at, the smallest in our community to our adults having better health. And this is my passion. This is why I do what I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Phelan, did you want to add anything else from your team before we hand it over to Arika?
Well, just again, you heard from the team, we're passionate and inspired by the love of our families. And we are grateful for stakeholders like you all that allow us to continue to deepen that work. I think globally and nationally, we are expanding our method with the support of Dr. Joy DeGruy and our 3M's relationship model. We were just honored with the $500,000 MacArthur grant. And so we've been leading symposiums. Portland is going to be on the map once again. We're leading throughout the country, and again, understanding the individual, the influences and what's happening there, the community, the collective, as we are navigating systemic racism, but we're also resilient and innovative, and our community is thriving in the midst of it all. And then those institutional barriers, how we support, equip, and advocate for our families. So again, we could talk all day about this, but I know we don't have all that time. And again, we're just excited to be with you all. And thank you so much for allowing us to love on our families the way we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Erika, do you want to?
Meg, is this the time for us to ask questions, or do you want us to go through all the panelists first?
You know what, actually, Commissioner Ryan, do you have a preference on that? I think it could go either way.
I think it's better when we do it while they're here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to ask questions of this team, go for it.
Yeah, someone go ahead and start. Anyone have any questions?
I'll jump in. First of all, it's wonderful to see you guys. And I, as being on the county commission, we get to hear about all this wonderful work that BPI does, especially we have the special, like the lactation, I think it's a resolution or something that we do. So we get to hear about this in detail, but it's wonderful to see Linda and hear about this and about the home visits and all the impact of that and the way that I think that work is giving families like an outlet and a chance to come together, even if it's virtually though, in a way that we've been missing for so long. So I'm so grateful for this work. And just congratulations on the grant and the ability to spread the news about this work nationally and internationally. I think that's fantastic. And I want this kind of work to grow. The only question that I had is when you were talking about some of the activities like the work that's happening at Zenger Farm or some of that, are you mostly saying like mothers engaged? Are there fathers also being engaged in this work and these activities too? I was just curious about what that looked like.
Yes, thank you for asking that question. So yes, we are having a great turnout with dads and moms together. I mean, we even are working with dads that are not in the current home with the children, but they are co-parenting. And so that's one of the support of the home visitors is we're being able to support the parents together and really identifying in that you are a family, you are your children's support group. And so we're working with both parents to come together. And yes, we invite the actual fathers to come. We've had events where it's been amazing to see the dads come and they want to participate. Just this past month, I've had 3 new referrals that are single Black dads who are raising their children on their own, and they're reaching out for support services. So yes.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions for the BPI team?
Well, first, just a comment. When it was asked, the last question was asked, you all 3 lit up at the same time with the same nonverbal. So that says a lot about how tight your team is. I have a question about, you said, 2 months, right, to 5 years. That was the age focus. And that's amazing. Do you do prenatal work as well and with this on this topic? And I wanted to give you some space to talk about the prenatal work.
So Ms. Linda, do you want to talk more about the prenatal piece?
What we've been doing is a continuum. So we're helping moms and starting with the prenatal phase, and then they're passed along to the TWC program. So we go up to the postpartum, but now we have another piece that we've just a new postpartum grouping, and it's actually called the First Mom's Promise Club. So it's actually mothers who are making a commitment to breastfeed for 1 year or more. And so those women we will continue to follow, even though they're going to go most times into TWC. And so we push early literacy also, but as they go into TWC, they're going to get more of the development model. So we start them off with talking about tummy time, and reading to babies, and observing massage with the baby. So those early bonding skills and also early literacy and talking to the babies and things like that. And then Tamara's program, TWC, picks up on it and takes them to 5 years old.
Yes.
Thank you.
Committee, any other questions for the BPI team? All right, Erika Hernandez from Portland Niños Hacienda CDC.
Buenas tardes, everyone. Mi nombre es Erika Hernandez, and I'm the Youth and Family Services Manager at Hacienda CDC. Thank you, members of the PCL Allocation Committee, for giving us the space to share our story from this last year. And I'm going to start with my own story. So we know isolation has been a familiar feeling to everyone who has experienced this pandemic, and it certainly was for my family. We welcomed our first son into this world during the pandemic, and I got to experience pregnancy, birth, and many important moments of my child's life without the embrace or presence of family and friends. We lost 8 family members within the span of a year. and spent the first 2 months of my child's life preparing immigration paperwork and working tirelessly to support family, both here and in the US and abroad. And my story is just one of many in the Latinx community of folks experiencing barriers to access social services and a disproportionate rate of infections and deaths as a result of COVID-19. So we know that for children like my son, the early experiences and relationships and the first 5 years of life are critical for development. And so what happens when those early years are marked by isolation, uncertainty, and the village that they say raises the child isn't accessible? And this has been the work of our Portland Niños team of early childhood educators to support the whole family during these critical years and times. So there's two key things that I want to share with everyone today. First, how we at Hacienda CDC work to bridge the digital divide for our families. And two, the connections and community that bridge created. So just as a reminder, our Portland Niños program includes one-on-one home visits as well as parenting groups. And one of our educators, Belén Hernandez, she's been with our Portland Niños team for the last 10 years. And she found herself disconnected, separated, and really unable to support her family in the early months of the pandemic. It was very overwhelming. She pivoted her work to help families process unemployment, SNAP, and other applications, and all of this over the phone. And frustrated, she turned to our Arrobas team for help. And so Hacienda's Arrobas program, it started in 2020 with the aim to provide resources and education that engage community and also advance digital literacy. And in the last year, our Arrobas team distributed over 600 laptops and MiFis and direct internet assistance to our program participants in partnership with the city of Portland. So every one of Belén's clients received a computer, home internet, and she also made it her mission to teach each of the family members how to access video messaging for home visits and groups. And many of the abuelitas who are caregivers on Belén's caseload relied on their younger grandchildren to help them sign on to groups, navigate applications. And now these same abuelitas not only have access to the virtual services, but they can navigate them con confianza, with confidence. And what our Portland Niños team did not expect was the ripple effect that would be created as a result to supporting our community's technological needs. Our families were connected. One in particular, whose 3-year-old son is on the autism spectrum, was able to continue appointments with his occupational therapist because the parent had access to a computer, the internet, and also support from our Portland Niños staff to log into the appointments. And 3 of our families who are eligible to receive a driver's license through HB 2015 were able to apply for a license online because of access to a computer, internet, and the support from our Portland Niños staff to complete the application. And so this last year, we have really spent building an online community where families are now eager to share with one another and take part. This is really their space to connect with other parents, caregivers, and children in the program. And although this time has been full of a lot of growing pains, the families in our program no longer feel that isolation that was once all too common during the pandemic. Community was created with the help of our Arrobas team, the Portland Niños staff, and the willingness of the families, first and foremost, to connect in a very, 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 very different setting. This past year, our Niños team were health advocates, tech support, SNAP enrollers, diaper deliverers. They announced all of the moratorium updates, legal rights. They were school liaisons. And most importantly, they were sometimes the only other adults that a parent was able to talk to during this time. And so we are just reflecting on what we would have done without the consistent support of the Portland Children's Levy. We really want to thank you for trusting us. Thank you for listening to the experiences of the families that we serve and our staff who share many of those experiences. PCL was the first funder during this time to say, hey, we trust you, like help us to understand what's happening and how can we help. So gracias por confiar en nosotros, por escuchar las experiencias de las familias que servimos. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. And committee members, before you ask questions, I just want to say to all the grantees, we recognize that you're taking a big chunk out of your day too, in interrupting potentially important work. And so if there are any of those of you who need to leave after you speak, please feel welcome to do so. You're not obligated to stay. But committee members have questions for Erika?
I don't have any questions. I just love hearing the stories about the way that you were able to be so flexible to serve the community and serve the families, and even starting out the Arobos group to get technology, which we know, we've done a lot of work with the digital divide and the lack of access to bandwidth, to broadband in the county, and it's part of it's geographical, but so much of it is economic. And so I just appreciate the way that you guys have pivoted, and I'm glad that PCL was able to help facilitate that and get you the resources you needed. So thank you for serving our community so well.
Erika, I just want to say how much I appreciated you starting off with a personal story. It really helped to hear, and congratulations. And also, condolences for the loss that your family has endured. And then just hearing you say that as a first, sometimes that you're the only other contact that the child will have as from another adult during this time of isolation. I don't think that I get to spend enough time just sitting with the impacts of COVID during such big transitions in life. And so I really appreciate you being vulnerable and giving such heartwarming stories about the impact of your work. So thanks for being here. It was good food for the soul. I'm so glad we invested in Hacienda.
All right, and if there are no other questions, thank you so much, Erika. Maria Quijano from Metropolitan Family Service Ready, Set, Go program. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Meg. And I just wanted to say wow to all of the wonderful stories that I've been listening to, and feel the privilege of knowing that other PCL grantees are also experiencing and have experienced similar situations as we have at the Ready, Set, Go program too. So Erika, I really resonate with everything that you said. So I just wanted to give that space and honor that. So thank you, Erika. So I just want to say hello, PCL allocation members. My name is Maria Quijano, and I am the Senior Early Learning Program Manager at Metropolitan Family Service. I have just transitioned to that role from being a program coordinator at Powell Butte, which is where we have our grant from PCL, into this position. So I'm kind of in that transitional phase at the moment. And just really quickly, a little bit about MFS in general. We serve around 18,000 people around the Portland metro area in a variety of programs that has the whole lifespan. And our three key initiatives are early learning and youth success, economic empowerment, and health and wellness. And which really, in Ready, Set, Go, we really do hit all of those really big key initiatives that MFS has for themselves, but also in the program. And similar to a lot of the other programs that have spoken already, we work very closely with parents and caregivers with providing parenting groups, parent-child interaction groups. We provide child assessments like the ASQ. We are also resource navigators. We provide resources to families, and especially this shift during the pandemic. Like Erika said, we were school liaisons, we were tech support, we were supporting families' social emotional well-being, their children's social emotional well-being, and supporting them with food boxes, diaper runs. We collaborated with Northwest Children Outreach for clothing bags, and we were doing that about every other week for almost the beginning of the pandemic all the way up to just recently. And then I think the biggest area that we noticed an increase in where our time was being spent was that one-on-one social emotional support for the parent, caregiver, and the child. Since what everybody alluded to, isolation, and even to this day, we're kind of getting used to getting back into the routine and getting, being more comfortable being around people and things like that. I think that throughout the whole pandemic, we noticed that, similar to what Erica said, that we were the one family, the one person that they were able to communicate to, that they were able to vent to, that they were able to come to if they needed any type of support. So we were almost like their one-stop shop, and they came to us for what they needed. And I do want to echo what everybody has mentioned also, just giving thanks to the PCL, just PCL in general, for giving us the flexibility to be able to support our families and meeting them where they are with what their needs are. Because that was really special and very supportive on our end to be able to meet them where they are and support their needs as they changed. Because even from the needs that were there 2 years ago are very different from how they are now as well. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things of what we've been kind of doing as well. We've partnered with another organization. So we do a lot of community partnerships, and we partnered with Growing Gardens to support the CSA food shares, which are bags. We partner with the local farm, and we were able, throughout the summer, we were able to support getting fresh veggies straight from the farm to the school, to parents, around 40 families. And we were able to serve around 190 people, so family members in general, throughout the summer from June all the way up to October. So that was a really great experience to be able to connect families to a local farm that's like women-led, POC, that they can relate to, that they know where the vegetables are coming from. So that was a really, really great experience. And we're hoping to do that again this summer as well. We also pivoted our, as many did, to virtual classes. So like our parent-child interaction groups that would be in person, we started doing virtual classes. And then something that we tried doing is that honoring the type of high quality support and experience that they had in class. We wanted to make sure to kind of mirror that virtually as well. So as teachers, we tried really hard to, partner with our IT department and get monitors and webcams and a board that it's kind of blurred out right now, in order to support engagement in our classes, and to support, just children's interests and following their lead. And then, so we've been having a really high number since the beginning of the pandemic. We've had an average of 15 participants a class. And then at the height of the pandemic, because everybody was hunkered down and in school and in their house, we had around like 25 participants in our classes weekly. That way, because I think that we try to honor everybody where they're at. And we also did provide technology, again, thanks to PCL. And also Wi-Fi support, so they were able to get engaged in class. Since a lot of families were engaging and participating through their phone, we wanted to make sure they had like a bigger screen so they can engage better and see us and see the book that we're reading. And yeah, so we've had really great success with our virtual classes. And lastly, I wanted to talk about an engineering project that we've been doing in Ready, Set, Go as well, in partnership with TERC, which is Technical Education Research Centers. We're in our third year, and then throughout the pandemic, we also had to pivot and do the research virtually. With great success, we were able to support families again with technology and support them with testing out some like engineering kits and figuring out what are, what are the interests, and figuring out how to because we wanted to see okay, how are these kits working, especially in a virtual landscape and at home, so then we can duplicate them and then be able to expand and give these kits to all of the kids in Ready, Set, Go. So we've been able to, we tested those out last year during the beginning of the pandemic. And then this year we've been able to test them out in all of our 8 sites. And I think we gave out over like 400 engineering kits, and we were able to do them together virtually to really great success. And then I think the finishing of this project is going to be being able to include more engineering activities, including STEM, art, into our Ready, Set, Go classrooms. So just thank you so much. I don't want to take too much time for giving us the opportunity to share about our program. And again, thank you to everybody here for trusting us as partners. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Anybody on the committee have questions for Maria?
I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you, Maria. I just am so impressed by the Ready, Set, Go program. And I'm really struck by the one-on-one home visits and the relationships that you cultivated. And I know at the beginning of the pandemic, we all talked quite a bit about essential workers. But what really struck me is that you clearly have essential relationships that you all have maintained over this last couple of years. And I really admire that. And also we placed so much attention on the beginning of the pandemic and the middle. And I love that you all are helping with resource navigation as we come out of this very difficult time, because in many ways, I think that's kind of a new beginning to another difficult phase. So just want to send my appreciation and thanks to what you all are doing.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Maria. You said the word pivot about 3 or 4 times, and I was struck by that, and because that's our reality over the last 2 years. What is it? What are you pivoting towards now, when at least we're being told that that science says it's okay to get back out in public more, and maybe a kernel of what do you think you'll keep from what you've learned over the past 2 years in terms of what virtual and technology has brought to be additive to the program? So just some top of mind thinking on that.
Yeah. And I think, and thank you for catching that, because that has been the whole pandemic, right? Just us moving and transitioning from phase to phase. And I think what we're trying to head towards is kind of like this comfort level when it comes to being back in person, and slowly seeing how we can support families with that, especially since everybody's at a different comfort level, and being able to honor that and support that. And as resources and support are changing as well, being able to just be conscious and checking in with families as in what's changing, what's coming up for you, what are the challenges that are now arising, and being able to adapt to that. So I think now we're kind of in that phase of we've always been in that phase of adaptability, but I think even more so now, I noticed that a lot of families want to have the peer-to-peer interaction. And so in order to support that, we've been doing also, I didn't mention, but we're doing outdoor outings as well. So I think I heard another community partner said, like, they've gone to Zenger Farm. So we've gone to Zenger Farm and Leach Botanical Gardens, and we've gone like hiking at Powell Butte Nature Park. And then, so I think that's a way that we're kind of helping, especially since we work mainly with BIPOC families, of like integrating them back into, so supporting them with the transition into being back in person and being comfortable with that, and then meeting them where they are with their comfort level. So I feel like that's where we're kind of moving towards as we're slowly going back in person into the schools as well. So that's the first part. Well, can you remind me the second part as well? Something about 2 years.
Actually, Maria, you covered all of it.
Okay.
I think I was getting at what would you sustain from what you've learned over the last 2 years, even if science says we can, whatever normal was, going back to the non-virtual world.
Yes. So I think what I picture us sustaining from all of this is just knowing how important the relationships are, and how important like just socialization and the connection is. It was definitely important to us before, but with the pandemic, it just kind of solidified even more that if we didn't have those relationships, like that pre-relationships before the pandemic, I think it would have been really hard for families to really be just very candid of like, I am stressed out, I'm going through these things, and this is what I need, and this is what I need support with. And then so because we had that relationship, they were able to express to us like, I really need all of this. And then I think because we did show up and we did meet the need and we were able to support them through that, I think what I'm noticing now too is like such a, even like, I didn't know it was possible, but even like stronger bond now with that. And I guess additionally too, is just technology. I feel like that is something that's going to keep on coming back and back and back, and that the importance of having technology and stable connection, internet connection at home, that is going to be super, super important as we continue figuring out, you know, are we going to somehow go back to virtual, or like maybe not everybody feels comfortable coming back to in person, or now we have that flexibility of having meetings online and maybe having parenting groups online. And how does that feel? How do we meet everybody's need now that we know that technology can work for us in this way, but making sure that it's accessible and that people have access to technology and internet connection, I think is something that I learned that is going to be super important moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Pivot. Word of the day.
Thank you so much, Maria. Robert Cantwell, Portland Public Schools Head Start. Take it away.
Hi, Meg, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to share about our program. And it's also great to be in the room with other community partners and agencies, some of whom we have actual partnerships with. So this web of support, it's really great to see in front of us. And you all made this happen. And so thank you for that. So Portland Public Schools Head Start, I'm the principal and director of the program. And as you may know, we serve children 3 to 5 years old. We're a program where families must be eligible to enroll their children. Income is one of those criteria factors, and as well as others. But we're here to serve the families in our community, in our city, that may not otherwise have access to preschool services. So we're a preschool program, but we're not just a preschool program. We're a family wraparound program. We provide services in areas not only in education and child development, but also in mental health, health and nutrition, and family and community engagement. So all of those things are our holistic approach to the families that we serve. We have 36 classrooms across 9 different sites in the city, so 760 spaces total. The Portland Children's Levy, the allocation that you make to us, enables us to serve 80 families in 4 classrooms. And I'd like to talk about those classrooms a little bit to give you some insight into where's our grant going? Who are we supporting? Because I think it's important to put a face onto the work that we do and to your grant. To begin with, we were able to convert a classroom over in North Portland at Sitten Elementary. We have 2 classrooms over there, and we were able to convert one into a Spanish dual language immersion classroom. And we did that because we had such a high percentage of Spanish-speaking children and families in that neighborhood and in our 2 classrooms that it just made sense to create a classroom with a native Spanish speaker, teacher, and educational assistant in the classroom. And not only that, but it's the first articulation of a preschool classroom to a larger K-5 dual language immersion program. Sitten Elementary is a Spanish DLI school. And so we were able to just build that bridge directly with the rest of the schools. So families didn't have to navigate multiple systems. The transitions were smoother. So wanted to highlight that just for your awareness. We've also been using funds to support our culturally specific Native American classroom over at Applegate Head Start in Northeast Portland. We have a Native American teacher who is leading that classroom. And so families who have Native American heritage are able to come together in that culturally specific classroom. That classroom is currently working on an outdoor learning space project that is culturally appropriate and responsive to their culture so that the children have an opportunity to learn in more natural environments. So that's an initiative that we're currently supporting in the program. And then there are the two classrooms that I would call our brain-based or neuroeducation or educational neuroscience classrooms, where we've got one here in Southeast. I'm currently at Creston Annex, one of our Southeast sites where we have one of those classrooms. The other one is at Clarendon Early Learning Academy in North Portland. And per the new criteria, when the Portland Children's Levy request for applications came out, you all were looking to invest in programs who were really utilizing the emerging field of neuroscience and brain research. And so we took advantage of that. And those two teachers, those two classroom teams are currently using a framework of neuroeducation to approach the learning process with the students that they serve. And it has proven to be really eye-opening. So we're engaging in innovative practices throughout the program and seeing some really good results at the student and family level. Similar to other community partners who shared today, the last 2 years have been nothing short of unusual and challenging. But I also like to frame our experiences in terms of opportunities. What opportunities have we had with the funds that we've been given? And I have to say, our children are showing us the way in terms of resilience and ability to adapt and to use Commissioner Ryan's word, pivot to, okay, what do I need to do today in my little world, within my family, within my community, right? I really feel like our children are incredible models of that. Having said that, I want to echo things that Maria said in terms of we've really learned some pretty big lessons the last couple of years. Our children need to be together in person to learn. Learning through play and that social aspect is just so critical. While we were highly successful in getting families devices and Wi-Fi hotspots, it was really clear that while the children, to some extent and to some level learned to engage through the laptop device last year, less so this year, but during quarantine periods, we did rely on some of that. They much prefer, and we prefer, to bring them together in our classrooms. And we feel hopeful that maybe we're finally moving past this isolation period and into a period of, okay, how can we get back together? What kinds of things do we need to focus on? And as Maria said, I just want to echo that we've been reminded that we're not just here for education, we're here for the family. And so that family and community engagement piece has really risen to almost be equally as important, or is equally as important in the work that we do, because we're here trying to help families meet their basic needs. We've got lots of family supports and services that we offer to families, connecting them to resources, helping them to get employed, and stay housed and stable. That has really been a significant learning piece the last couple of years. How do we meet or help families meet their basic needs? Because that's essential. Without that, everything else really is difficult to accomplish because we need kids to feel a sense of belonging. We need them to feel safe. And so the Portland Children's Levy allocation has really enabled us to touch and reach 80 children and their families consistently from year to year. As a success example, we didn't have to close any classrooms the last 2 years. We kept them all open, whether we were virtual or not, just because we wanted families in all of our geographic areas to have access. Even if our class sizes were small, it was okay. We wanted the children and families to be able to access us. I just want to try to think if there's anything else here wanted to highlight. I just wanted to express our deep appreciation on behalf of our program and the families for you reaching out to the families in our own city and making a difference. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Robert. Questions from the committee?
Hi, Robert. I have just one question. It was wonderful to hear about at Sinton Elementary, where they're part of a dual immersion school and that they now begin at that younger age level. That's such great news. Are there any other examples of that in PPS, or is this the innovative center for such articulation? Yeah.
Currently, it's the only preschool classroom that I'm aware of that is language specific and articulated to a K-5. I know that there's discussions. I'm part of some discussions about expanding that opportunity in other languages. We have 2 other Spanish DLI classrooms in our program. They're just not articulated within a larger school, but we do have them.
And I'm sure you're tracking data so you can make the case on how smart it will be to further scale that up. Anyway, that's just great to hear. I know the Earl Boyle's example and David Douglas is not the same, but it's just great to hear that these are starting to bubble up around our city. So thanks for sharing that story.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? All right. Thank you each for being here this afternoon, Robert, Maria, Erika. We so appreciate your time and all of the work that you are doing with the children and families that you serve. I know I'm speaking on behalf of the whole group here, expressing our deep and heartfelt gratitude. You are welcome you're welcome to leave when you and continue on with your work, and we really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, thanks.
Okay, it's so wonderful to have the grantees come to the meetings. Thank you for organizing that, Meg and staff. It's by far the best moment of my day. I know, not to dismiss any of the meetings I had prior to this, but it's refreshing, let's put it that way. Next up, John Kelly, you're back. You're going to summarize the January revenue forecast.
I am back. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to share my screen. We have just one slide, and my goal is to keep this short, and it is sweet. It's good news. So you can see my screen. Oh, no, not yet. Now. Yes. Okay. So what we're talking about here is a new revenue forecast. Every January, the city economist gives us a new forecast for the revenues for the current year and the out years, the next several years. What the important information for us is the 3-year time period that included last year. So we have actual revenue from last year. We know how much money came in last year. We're in the middle of the second year of the current grants. We actually know pretty well that the economist's prediction for this year is accurate. We already have 99.6% of the revenue in, so that's good news. And then there's a prediction for next year. So those 3 years of revenue comprise the funds that we've granted that you all said, we proposed to you, hey, let's give out this much money. You all said, great, let's do it. We made the grants. The grants are ongoing. We're just about the middle of those grants. And the good news is, a year ago, we had kind of bad news. We said, we're going to have 3.9 million fewer dollars than we expected over that 3-year time horizon. Well, since then, things have looked better. We have 2.3 million more dollars than we expected, or we anticipate having 2.3 million. So the shortfall, and it's not even a shortfall, but the lower than predicted number is $1.6 million now. The bottom line is we do expect to be able to cover the current grants. So we're pretty darn sure we're going to have enough money to fund everything that we've already agreed to fund, committed to at this point. But the further news is that we believe, if these numbers hold up, and we'll get a new set of numbers next year, but we believe at this point that we will be able to renew grants at a similar level in the assuming that, a lot of things have to happen between here and there. You all have to decide, et cetera. But what our typical process has been is 3-year grants with 2-year renewals. If that is the choice of the committee, et cetera, then we do believe there are enough funds there. Some of the elements that contribute to that, last year we had the most significant underspending by grants that we've ever had. Typically we have 3% to 5% underspending. Last year was 15% underspending, and I think we talked to you about that already. So there's still an opportunity for some of those funds to go out. We have not lowered grant amounts, and if spending is more robust this year and next year, that those funds may go out, but we do expect some underspending. We don't know how much, we have no idea how much that will be over the 3-year period. But if there's underspending, that money goes back into the pot. And I guess it'll be at least $1.6 million. I'd be surprised if it were less. So we're talking about $70 million in grants. So 1.6 million is a pretty small percentage. And so, yeah, that's the story at this time. We won't even really know current year spending till the end of the summer, really. And so we'll have more information about how things are looking at that time, and then again next year at this time. Any questions on that? I'm going to stop sharing.
Nice work.
Nice work. Property values in the city of Portland. Yeah, it's good news. Yes, agreed.
John, did I hear it right that the underspending is part of the equation on why we'll be able to meet all of our needs?
Not yet. We anticipate underspending. If there were no underspending, that would be very strange in the history of the levy.
Right. So that you're forecasting on past behavior that will roughly be about.
Yes, but even if it all got spent, we do think we would have enough, because there were some other expenses built in there, $500,000 a year in training and technical assistance that we're hardly spending. So that's likely to still be there. So yeah, there's it's not necessary that grantees underspend, but it is likely, at least.
And it makes sense that it's higher than usual because of what we've experienced with COVID and isolation. Okay,
yes.
Great.
Yeah,
all right, that all makes sense. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, didn't we also, in addition to COVID, did we have more new programming than normal? And new programming always seems to start slower than anticipated in many programs, so they underspend as well. So those two things working together are really going to suggest that there would be a higher than normal.
That's right, Mitch. It's definitely a factor. The combination of pandemic and new was particularly rough.
All of the staff was going like this at the same time. Yeah. Okay, on to the next topic. That's you, Meg. You're going to present the annual performance report for the last fiscal year.
I am going to do that. So give me a minute while I set that up and share screen. And while I do that, one thing I have a question about is in this presentation, which takes a little bit of time, are a number of quotes from grantees, and I'll explain why those are featured this year. But what I'm wondering is if you all would be willing, you committee members would be willing to take turns reading them so that this presentation is a little bit more interactive and I'm not the only one speaking at you, but you all get to engage the material a little bit too. So if you're willing to do it, thank you. And I'll call on you. And if for some reason you don't want to, you can just chat me and then I'll know to keep the ball rolling differently and very smoothly. All right, just a second as I get it going. All right. You can see my screen now, I hope. Excellent. Thank you for those who are giving me the thumbs up. That's always helpful. Okay. So this presentation will cover the typical levy performance data that we report to you all annually, and that is required as part of the when the levy was reauthorized by voters. It's data that we report in the city budgeting process as well. But one of the things that we did last year when we provided this report to the committee was ask for your feedback around things that you would like to see less of or more of. And one thing that you were very clear about is wanting to understand more and hear more in grantees' own words about their accomplishments for the year. So we have built into this presentation a number of quotes that are taken from grantees in each of our 6 program areas that reflect the data that are highlighted in this report. And we tried to pay special attention to grantees who haven't been featured in reports or other PCL communications in the past. So just a reminder, these are the 3 main levy goals that were part of the ballot authorized by Portland voters: preparing children for school, supporting their success in and out of school, and eliminating racial and ethnic disparities in children's well-being and school success. So the data that we'll review today is toward those goals. I'm going to talk about data in 5 main categories: access to services, so the number of children who are served and the demographics of children and families served, the types of services that people participated in funded programs, their participation levels or attendance in programs, their outcomes, and then a new data element that we have this year is the demographics of staff and board of levy-funded organizations. So service access, I should just explain that in these data that I'm first going to review, the first several slides are taken from the 5 main program areas that are relationship-based services: early childhood, child abuse prevention intervention, foster care, after school, and mentoring. Hunger is reported separately later in this presentation, as is our special project, the Child Care Initiative. So in those 5 program areas, about 70 grants, there were over 5,500 children served, which was about 75% of our goal in those program areas. And not surprisingly, the pandemic had a major impact on how and whether a number of children to be served goals were met. In 2 program areas in particular, the programs were collectively under goals. So in foster care, there were several new programs, and there were ongoing challenges, which was true before the pandemic, with referrals from DHS for children who are involved in the foster care system. So that's an ongoing system issue that we are working on with DHS. And then after school, as a result of the pandemic, with no in-person services, there are many fewer groups or much smaller group programming happening virtually than would have normally been done if things had been in person. And after school programs offered much more individualized services to children and families. So they served fewer, but they served them sort of more intensively than they might have otherwise. In terms of service access and demographics, the levy is reaching its priority populations. And what this slide tells us is that not only are we reaching our priority populations, so mostly children of color, children and families navigating poverty, significant portion of children whose home language is a language other than English, and many who resided in East Portland, and for grantees who were able to report on the disability status of the children that they served, about 10% of children had a disability. So we're pleased to see that grantees were still reaching the populations that we want to be reaching. This next slide is our first quote from a program, and the program is a mentoring program that serves students who are the first generation in their family to prepare for and apply and go to college. It's from College Possible. So Commissioner Ryan, would you like to be the reader of this quote?
Sure.
Thank you.
I have seen the resiliency of my students every time I interact with them. The issue is not the youth's resiliency, but a society that requires them to constantly be resilient. This repeated reliance on their resiliency highlights the systemic root problems that continue to negatively affect my students and many others like them when they deserve the best. I'm inspired every day knowing that they choose to fight for their place in a system not made for them.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan.
You're welcome.
And so that quote was chosen to reflect sort of the populations that our grantees are reaching, so you can understand some of those unique experiences. So I should just add, if you all have questions as I'm going through this presentation, feel free to ask them. We'll just try, go ahead.
For the good of the order, just always define East Portland. I assume it's east of 82nd or east of 122nd or east of 205. Maybe that's why I asked, because I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Mostly, that's a great question. We use zip codes to define it, and they are mostly zip codes that lie entirely east of 82nd Avenue. And they are 97216, 97220, 97230, 97233, 97236, and 97266.
Now, I think I asked because I'm old enough in this town to remember when everyone just thought it was east of the Willamette River. So I always like to make sure it's clear and it's more out where Mr. Vega Peterson resides. And anyway,
Yes,
appreciate that. Thanks.
I appreciate you asking.
Shout out to you, Commissioner, and your good work out in really
97233, boo boo.
Excellent. So moving on from numbers of children served and the demographics, the service activities that grantees provided, you heard that word pivot from Maria a few times. And so here's what the pivot looked like. Most grantees provided virtual individual sessions or group sessions with families they served. They provided lots of other contacts through phone calls, text, social media. Most of them provided direct client assistance, either with funding through their PCL grant budgets or other resources. They provided direct resource referral connection, and many of them provided educational activity kits, as you heard from some of our speakers today, that they used during those virtual sessions. So we have a few more quotes that kind of help ground what the experience looked like over the past year. This one is from Youth Rights and Justice, which is a foster care grantee, and they focus on educational advocacy for youth who are involved in the foster care and juvenile justice system, particularly making sure that the public education system meets their educational needs. Commissioner Vega-Peterson, would you be willing to read this one?
Sure.
Okay, great, thanks.
The pandemic caused dramatic shifts in the way we worked and forced us to adapt to seeing clients less frequently and remotely. We also had to rely heavily on foster parents to maintain connections with our clients because we weren't able to see our clients at school any longer. Our greatest accomplishment was our staff's ability to shift to meet the needs of our clients while also dealing with their own personal struggles related to the pandemic. The ability to ensure all of our clients were connected to school and getting the supports they could during distance learning was the first priority.
Excellent, thank you. And this next program is one of our early childhood grantees. Impact Northwest Parent-Child Development Services focuses in a non-pandemic era in home visits for families with children under the age of 5, focus on child development and parenting. So Felicia, I can't see everybody on my screen.
Yeah, I can read this.
All right, thank you.
We realized the difficulty behind children staying focused on the screen. So many playgroups became more parent-oriented. They checked in and hear from each other. Home visitors would bring opening questions that could facilitate conversations between parents around healthy practices or how to stay positive. Parents appreciate the space to talk and to know that others were having the same experiences.
Thank you so much. All right, so you heard a little bit about the types of service activities and what the experience looked like. This is about frequency, duration, and length of enrollment for the children and families that participated. So most grantees reported that families were attending services at least weekly for about 45 minutes to an hour and enrolled in their services for about 6 months during the year. Not all programs are designed to serve families for an entire year, but most of the programs were keeping families enrolled for longer periods of time. And so these next few quotes are from programs that sort of talking about levels of participation or attendance. And this program is an after-school program that offers arts-based education featuring Latino artists. And this particular quote resonates because the parent in this family lost 2 family members to COVID during the school year. Tracy, would you be willing to read this one?
Sure, I'd be happy to. My daughter loved the class and we appreciate all the projects. It has been the light in the darkness during these pandemic times. She waits with excitement to begin her Mondays with your class. It has been her motivation to attend school, and it has been a great help for me to continue giving her happy moments.
Thank you. And this next program is a youth orchestra in North Portland, focusing on music education. And this quote is from a 9th grader at Roosevelt High School who's completing her 6th year in Bravo. And Mitch, would you be willing to read this one?
You bet. What's Bravo like during a pandemic? Bravo has always been a place for community, and that feels a little different virtually. I know a lot of us are used to spending time together every day, not just as peers, but as friends, and being the last people we see before the weekends. Even though we were all going through something different during this pandemic, Bravo is always going to be a place where we can forget everything and focus on something we love.
Thank you, Mitch. All right. And so as I noted earlier, most of the data that we were looking at is from grants in 5 program areas. And new this year was our small grants program, but their grants started in January, so they only had 6 months of funding during this fiscal year. So we don't have data yet from them in this presentation, but we did feature some quotes. This one is from the Ethiopian Eritrean Resource and Cultural Center, which focuses on providing support to youth who are recent immigrants and refugees and their school engagement and success. And I'm wondering, Commissioner Ryan, if you'd be willing to read this one.
The families have been isolated for months already, and we're having difficulty accessing COVID information, food, and supplies, as well as feeling overwhelmed with fear and helplessness and not being able to help their children's online schooling. It was imperative to start the program with teaching them the technology aspect of using their laptops for online schooling, how to access and share their screens, complete assignments and turn them in on time, and to communicate with their teachers for help or questions. Since most of them arrived in the US recently, the online education system was an additional hurdle to the already challenging times they were facing. Parents felt better knowing that they have a mentor, tutor, who helps them navigate the school system and keep the youth focused.
Thank you. So you've heard about who we served, and you've heard about how well they've participated in services and what kinds of activities they did. So outcomes. One thing that was difficult this year for grantees was tracking outcomes. So for the outcomes that they were able to track, and you may remember that across all their contracts, a grantee may have 2 to 4 outcomes in a grant contract. So we look at all of those together, all those goals, and grantees met about 70% of their goals. And what they track and how they measure it varies by the type of service that they provide and the population that they serve. And as I noted, some challenges took place this year with outcome tracking. Probably the biggest one had to do with our after-school mentoring programs, who typically would get data on school attendance and school behavior on the youth that they serve. And we assist them with that process. But we decided as a staff that due to the dramatic changes to attendance and school behavior data during the virtual school year, that we were not going to ask grantees to do the types of processes they would need to track those data. So we are not including those data in this report this year. But for the data that grantees did collect, yes.
Can I just, I totally support that, makes sense. I think everybody expects to see a spike in those types of behaviors coming out of COVID, going back into the classroom. I think it would be good for us to collect that data, not in a way to punish anybody, but I think it'll be a good baseline. We might have to do this again, and it might be informative of where we need to invest both in the coming years, or if this happens in the future, it'll be a good marker to come back to.
Thanks, Mitch. Yeah, we are planning to gather those data for this current year that we're in, 21-22, because school did go back in person. And so the way that schools are collecting those data looks more typical to what it looked like when school was in person. But the year that we spent, or the 3/4 of the year that was mainly virtual school, we just felt like we didn't have context to even understand what those data would be telling us. And I think we all felt internally like we weren't confident that the way that schools collected them always felt consistent, even between buildings. It's hard enough without a pandemic, and I think it got a lot harder during. So we decided to let that one go for 1 year. But your point is well taken. Lisa, were you going to chime in?
I was just going to say that just to keep in mind, like school behaviors, which is suspensions and expulsion referrals, which were simply not happening in the pandemic year at all. So like there were some data points, not only would it not have been good data, but there was literally no data. So, just to keep that in mind.
Sorry, I was muted. For this slide you've been looking at for a minute. The good news is that for the grantees who have similar types of services and who track similar types of outcomes that we can aggregate on our end across the children or youth or families served and for whom these outcomes are measured, outcomes look good for these programs. They look like what they look like in typical years that aren't in person. So in general, child development, parenting outcomes, youth development, and school engagement stayed positive. And a couple more quotes to help ground the outcomes and talk and sort of hear from a personal voice what they look like. This one is from Campfire Columbia, which is a mentoring program with middle school age youth. And Felicia, would you be willing to read this one?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
A student in the 6th grade program at George Middle School saw some awesome success with his yearly goal map. Using the goal map incentives, this student worked toward a dream to become a film director and bought himself a video camera to make high-quality home videos. He recorded a video to share about how the incentive goals worked for him at Campfire. Aww.
Thanks, Alicia. I know, we feel that way too. And this one, Lutheran Community Services Northwest, is a grantee in our child abuse prevention intervention program area. They focus on parenting support with immigrant and refugee families. And in this case, they also focus on family stability, which is instrumental in allowing them to focus on parenting goals too. And so, Tracy, would you be willing to read this one?
Sure, happy to.
Thanks.
What we have accomplished is that our collective voice of pain and resiliency is stronger than it was when this program started approximately a year ago. During this unprecedented time of pandemic and social unrest, our community partners, Refugee Care Collective, mentors, and volunteers have provided client assistance in form of food, cleaning supplies, rental assistance, laptop computers, and even a car when one of our clients' car was vandalized and rendered inoperable right in front of their apartment.
Thank you, Tracy. So that concludes sort of the data and outcomes around those 5 program areas I talked about earlier. Now we'll focus our attention on hunger relief, and then we have the Community Child Care Initiative and a little bit other data around organizations, staff, and board demographics. So our hunger relief program area has 11 grantees, and collectively they offer services like weekly emergency food delivery or pickup. They deliver prepared meals. They offer education, workshops, and cooking kits focused on nutrition, food equity, and gardening. And so as you can see, they reached over 20,000 children, double their goals for fiscal year 21. And if you were to count for all the distributions of food that they did last year, and if you were to count all of the people who showed up at each distribution and add them all up, there were over 400,000 people that the grantees reached collectively last year. So these programs were doing a lot of work, as all of ours were. And this quote features a little bit more on our gardening education and some of the food education focus in the hunger relief program area, particularly with youth. And this program, Growing Gardens, offers youth gardening education across a number of schools in Portland. And Mitch, would you be willing to read this one?
You bet.
Thank you.
We developed and implemented classes in Spanish at the 2 schools with Spanish immersion programs. One of the youth grow staff, who is from Mexico, taught lessons on the cultural and ecological practice of growing the 3 sisters, beans, squash, and corn. She showed students the diversity of corn grown in Mexico, demonstrated the process of nixtamalization, milling and making tortillas. Students received take-home kits with materials to make tortillas at home, masa, a plastic circle, and a recipe card so that they could follow along. She shared that although some students had parents from Mexico, most students had never understood the process of making tortillas, and they were excited to learn about it and taste it.
Awesome, thank you.
Great quote.
Yeah. So the Community Child Care Initiative is one of our special projects. It crosses two program areas, after school and early childhood, because it offers childcare subsidies to low-income working families with children ages infant through age 12, so after school, before and after school care also. It also exceeded its goals last year. And I think one of the most important things to keep in mind about this particular project is that it's aligned with the state employment-related daycare subsidy program. And that program had some dramatic policy changes during the pandemic. It increased its eligibility to serve families who are at an income level of 250% of the federal poverty level or less. And it also created an opportunity for no family to have to pay their, what they call a copay toward their childcare. But one thing to keep in mind is that the way that the state's subsidy is calibrated is that it only reimburses childcare providers for 75% of the market rate of care. So an actual childcare provider's cost is often much higher than that. And the CCI subsidy that we help provide fills the difference between what the ERDC subsidy was able to pay and the actual childcare costs, assuring that families during the pandemic did not pay toward their childcare if they qualified for these programs. So just to give you some financial figures, the monthly median income of families in the CCI program was $2,600. The monthly median cost of childcare for families in CCI before the subsidy was $1,400. The state median subsidy amount they received was around $1,000, and the monthly median CCI subsidy was $400. So you can see what a big difference it made. I'll read this quote, and then we'll go back through the rotation. The staff, so this is from the staff at the Community Child Care Initiative, which is operated by Mount Hood Community College Child Care Resource and Referral. CCI continues to fill the gaps for Portland families that state systems don't cover. CCI recognizes that high copays are not affordable to low-income families. CCI is also the only program that pays their actual rates. This has given providers confidence to accept families receiving subsidies and continue to pay staff and operate high quality more consistently, which was an enormous contribution to the childcare sector during the pandemic, who lost a lot of clients and staff due to COVID. So this is a new feature to our reporting this year. We have collected the demographics of staff and board members in our grant application process in the past, but we had not made it an ongoing reporting element. And this was a recommendation from our community engagement process that the community engagement results indicated that people really want to understand that the staff who are working with the children and families that the Levy funds reflect the cultural identity and backgrounds of the families that they serve. So in asking grantees to report on this data annually, what we learned from the 43 grantees that were able to complete the data is that 53% of the organizations funded by the Levy serve a majority Black, Indigenous, and people of color clientele. 47% of the organizations funded by the Levy had majority Black, Indigenous, and people of color direct service staff, and 43% had majority Black, Indigenous, and people of color management staff, and just over a third had majority Black, Indigenous, and people of color boards of directors. And the next quote that I'm going to show you helps ground why this is such an important thing for us to know and understand. Commissioner Ryan, would you like to read this quote?
Ventura Park's son is a Sun program, right? Is really proud of the parents hired as Sun staff and their transformation into leaders within the school community. This year, the Sun site manager connected with a family because they were in need of employment. Sun hired and trained this parent to support with outreach to Spanish-speaking families. This parent also supported with the driving delivery of activity kits for virtual learning and with hunger relief activities. Building a relationship with this parent, they revealed they loved to garden. The SUN program created a virtual SUN gardening class, which this parent led and did an amazing job. Students loved this class.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. And this quote is from one of our small grantees. Again, thinking about the staffing at our organizations and how the pandemic disproportionately impacted communities of color. This quote resonates for that reason. And Commissioner Vega-Peterson, would you like to read this one?
Sure. Stress from the pandemic and racism continue to have a significant impact on our leadership team. This can cause a need for time off or symptoms of burnout, which make the work difficult. In addition, though we are very excited to have completed the process of becoming a nonprofit, this took up a lot of capacity during this grant period. Despite these challenges, our programming in 2021 has attracted record numbers of youth. We attribute this to our radical new structure developed by our young Black leaders in 2020.
Thank you. And this last quote, I think sums up sort of what I feel like was a universal theme in many of the reports that we read and that we as a team shared. And I think it does a good job capstoning this presentation. Felicia, would you like to read this one?
Absolutely. When the pandemic hit and so many things were unknown, we were faced with the question of whether to scale back and prepare ourselves for a potentially hard year, or to double down on our commitment to meet the needs of our staff and community. We chose to give raises to all our staff, to maintain their current scheduled hours, and to launch new programs to meet the needs of the community who were social distancing, grocery delivery. This decision allowed us to thrive as a community at a time when so much was against us. We came to rely on each other, and at the end of every day, the health and well-being of our community was the priority. For myself as a leader, this was an invaluable lesson, that in difficult times, rather than scale back and prepare for any number of unknowns, the right thing to do is to take care of people.
Thank you, Felicia.
You're welcome.
And I ended that with that quote specifically, just to have us all keep in mind how important it is when our organizations respond with the values that drive them forward. That concludes this part of the data presentation. Lisa has some mid-year progress to share also, but I'm happy to answer any questions on these data. Thank you all for making it participatory, made it a lot easier and enjoyable for me too. Lisa, should I move on to the next slide for you?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to steal that trick though. Like, that's great. Like, I want to incorporate that more into Zoom meetings. I think that was wonderful. Thank you, Meg.
Oh, you're welcome, Commissioner. Thank you.
And I have to credit Erica some. I think Erica has really brought a very participatory thought process to our team and thinking about how we can involve people better. And the minute Meg said that, I was like, oh, why do we not think of that beforehand? That's a great idea. So it's really nice to hear you all speak more and to have everybody participate. So I just have a few slides. This is, so Meg just kind of reviewed the past year, just to be clear, that's the year that closed. So what I'm talking about now is the year that we're currently in. So that year, just to ground you a sec, is encompassing the Delta surge and the beginning of the or I should say this reporting period is the Delta surge and the beginning of the Omicron as well. So just to keep in mind the time period that we're talking about here. Okay, Meg, you can go ahead and advance that to the first slide. So this gives you the facts and the figures of what we understand to be happening thus far this year from the grantees. And all of this information is coming from the grantees' written reports, and then staff also meets with each grantee program individually. So we kind of flesh out and understand what's going on the ground. So as you can see, 70% of the programs are on track to meet their annual goals for the number of people that they served. The program area where most grantees were on track was child abuse prevention and intervention. The program areas where there was more struggle was mentoring, foster care, and after school. And you can see that mirrors what Meg just told you about last year, that foster care and after school were the areas that had the most barriers to meeting their goals for a number of people to reach. So that is continuing, at least for the first part of the year. The majority of the programs are using a mixed delivery method, also not surprising probably at this point. There's usually some component of service that people are delivering virtually. About 26% or a quarter of the programs are doing only in person, and 12% are doing only virtual. The program areas where there's the highest concentration of in-person only is hunger relief and after school. So many programs, after school programs are located in schools, and those are all happening in person now. Hunger relief has always kind of remained more or less in person with the exception of drop-off, touchless drop-off services. Good news is that grantees are pretty much all of them are tracking participant attendance. So they're going to be able to report that data as compared to their specific goals that they have for attendance this year. And similarly, they are also tracking, almost everybody's tracking at least some outcome data. So Meg kind of went through what some of the challenges are in tracking data. And that has, I would say about half, it was 50% of the grantees reported some challenges gathering outcome data still, and that has to do with things like if you're doing a virtual program component, you're trying to get surveys completed online, that's often difficult to make it happen. There's also been a lot of intervention of illness, which means that sometimes families or staff are not there to be able to give assessments or do assessments or get people to complete surveys at the right time. So a lot of outcome measurements have to be done in a certain time after a certain amount of services been received. So that has been an issue. And then the other issue is staff turnover in positions, which is sometimes left with no staff to follow up, or staff leaving early or vacating positions early and before there was time to give the assessment. So I'll talk a little bit more about staff if you want to head to the next slide. The themes from reports and from conversations we've had with grantees, the number one by far challenge and frustration of people providing services in this last 6 months has been around staffing. Programs have struggled to fill open positions, particularly positions that require in-person program delivery. And there's been significant turnover in program staff that has led to vacancies that have really overburdened existing staff. And I can't emphasize that enough. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who tell me they're doing two people's jobs. And also has made for interruptions and changes to service delivery. So that word pivot has come up again and again still. If there's insufficient staff, sometimes people have to change what the service activity is. They have to change the amount of the service or the number of contacts they're having. There's been all kinds of that still happened in this first 6 months of the year due to pandemic effects. The other issues, around illness, of course, this is obvious, but illness and death has been mentioned again and again as causing service interruptions and people not being able to be at their jobs or not being able to serve the people that were enrolled in the service. Programs that depend on volunteers also struggle to recruit volunteers, particularly hunger relief and mentoring program areas use a lot of volunteers. And for in-person, for things that need to be done in person, that was a struggle. Again, if you understand that it's been difficult to find people to work for pay, it's been even that much more sometimes to get people to volunteer. Another key issue is around space. People have had to space people out to meet COVID regulations, and that has sometimes impacted the number of people that they can serve then, or the number of people they can enroll in an after-school program because they can only have 12 kids in the room instead of 24. So when you see those numbers, these are the themes that are coming up behind them that explain why not everybody can meet the goals they have for the number of people that they want to reach. And then last, I will say this has been an ongoing theme. You've heard us say this before, and it still showed up pretty significantly in the media reports. The mental health challenges, and I think you heard some of this in what people were and the grantees that were speaking today, as well as some of the quotes that you all were just reading. Mental health challenges and violence in the community have had pretty significant impacts. And the trauma that people, that the service providers and direct service folks are working with people on has been really significant, and it's not ending. And so that has just really come through loud and clear. And I think you see that in the quotes as well, some of them that you all read. Okay, last slide. I've got a few themes from the program areas, just so you can understand, because there are different issues facing them. In child abuse prevention and intervention, and this is sort of on the good side of things, and I think you heard some of this from, I believe it was Maria who was speaking about this, even though she was not in this program area. One of the positives that has come out of the pandemic is the fact that virtual program delivery works in certain situations better than in person. And one of those situations is getting parents to come to groups. It's so much easier, and they're getting better attendance than they got before the pandemic in group services. So that's a win, and one I wanted to make sure to highlight. And the programs have highlighted that they're going to continue doing that. That is a practice that won't end with the pandemic. So that's a plus. On the after school side, I would say after school folks that are located at schools have been impacted by a lot of issues, including school staff shortages and issues with not being able to hold recruitment events in schools because of numbers restrictions, and also in some cases a limited number of people that can come into school sites. And I imagine that Jessica probably has heard from the Sun System, has heard all about these challenges and issues that have made it really difficult for some partners to deliver services. There has also been issues with folks who have remained all virtual. They've encountered different barriers. So outreach has still remained an issue if you're an all virtual after school program, and also timing issues. Kids need to get from school back home if they're going to tune into a virtual after school program. So those things have been sort of continued barriers. Hunger relief has faced some logistical challenges on sites. There's been a lot of competition for space, and that is, they've not, for the most part, they've been forced to continue to operate outside, whereas before they might have been inside. And many of them have lacked access to the indoor food storage that is at schools. So that's been some of the issues that they faced. And early childhood is the last theme. What has come up there is, and this relates to some of the things that Meg was talking about, and then I talked about as well, in difficulties in measuring outcomes. Completing the ages and stages questionnaire, which is the standard developmental screening tool, is really hard in a virtual setting. And since a lot of home visits end up being virtual still, that's been a barrier. Kids don't necessarily stay on the screen the whole time. Families don't necessarily return paperwork. So I guess we bring up these themes in part to make you understand, or to help you understand what's behind the numbers, right? So if we come and tell you that 70% are on track, you understand why 30% are not on track, because they're facing these kinds of barriers in program delivery. We've sort of remained flexible with people during the state of emergency is still happening. So if we're giving people flexibility to try to meet the needs that are coming up and deal with the barriers that they're faced with. So that's the mid-year wrap up, and I think you can stop sharing, and there are no more slides from me anyway.
I was about to say there are some more, but not from.
There are some more. I forgot. I don't want to cut Erica's slides off. Are there any questions about mid-year or about what came up in themes from folks? I'm happy to answer if there is. Thanks, folks, for listening. So I know it's a lot of listening today.
Just one quick question. When you say that they were tracking at least one outcome data, they're tracking at least one outcome. Mm-hmm. Is that a mutual decision that the staff worked with them on, or did that self-reported from the grantee?
We work with grantees on what they're able to do during the pandemic. So that's been an individual conversation with each grantee. And in some cases, there are, for instance, some grant agreements where the only outcomes that are in the grant agreement are around school attendance and school behavior. And as we said last year, we did not track either of those for that. That was 21-22. For this year, we expect to have those data. So those are outcomes we will have data on. There are some outcomes depending on the service. And in some cases, maybe that particular service component is not going forward during the pandemic. So we've modified with the grantee to do something different, or do only one component if the one that's most able to be done under the circumstances. So then therefore they're not tracking the outcome because they didn't do the service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So we're making those adjustments by grant.
It makes sense that you made adjustments because of the conditions, and it also makes sense it's interactive with the grantee. So both things made sense. Thanks.
Okay, sure.
If there's is there any public testimony on what we just went through?
There's no public
testimony. In the script, we ask that a lot. That's why.
You're doing great. There's no public testimony on the data. The only person who signed up for public testimony was on the topic that Erica is about to present, and I'm not sure.
Well, with no further ado, we must move on to that. That's our last topic. Thanks for your patience, Erica. At our December meeting, we voted to move forward with the forming of the Community Council to advise us and staff on policy and process. Erica is going to give us an update on that progress. Take it away, Erica.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. And this will be much shorter. I actually only have 3 slides to share. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay. So as you said, in December, you all voted for the formation of the Community Council. And I'm excited to report that we have actually begun the process of launching the Community Council, but we are, like I said, we've begun that process. So let me, sorry, here, one moment. My computer is freezing. Here we go. There we go. So as a reminder, the charge of the Community Council is simply to advise Levy staff and the Allocation Committee on the design and implementation of future funding rounds and all of our program areas and our grant types, meaning both small grants and large grants, and to participate in funding recommendations presented to the Allocation Committee. So I'm going to talk about where we are in the process of launching the Community Council. And I want to reiterate, like, we've listened to many challenges that are happening in our community today, and that does seem to be impacting our ability to recruit members to be on a volunteer committee at this time. So it's possible that some of these dates may need to change to give us more time for recruitment and to find people. But these are general timelines as they stand right now. So in February, we submitted the founding documents to the Office of Civic Life, and then the application portal opened on February 22nd. This week, we are going to hold our first applicant information session and virtually online. And we have, last time I checked, over 11 people registered for that, but it looked like there were still some registrations coming in. And then we'll have an additional registration, an additional applicant information session on March 31st. And that one will be in the evening to accommodate different schedules. So once the applications currently are due on April 10th, and once that portal has closed and we've received all the applications, our plan is to spend mid-April to mid-May having the work group review the applications and developing options for the allocation committee. And then in mid-May to early June, staff will meet individually with each allocation committee member to discuss the work group recommendations, to make sure that you understand those recommendations and answer any questions that you may have. Then on June 14th, the allocation committee will meet to vote on the final selection. Later that month, mid to late June, we'll be notifying all of the selected community council members and sending them welcome materials and just generally welcoming them to being part of the council. And then the orientation and training for council members will happen sometime between July and September. And that's really contingent on the hiring of the community engagement coordinator, which that process hasn't begun yet. We're finishing another hiring process first, and then we'll move on to that one. So that's our timeline, and that's where we currently are. And it's also the end of my slide, so I can take any questions.
Do you have much interest in it so far, Erica? You know, with everything, have you seen much real interest?
Yes. And I also feel like the word is just starting to get out. There are some places where we sent the announcement where I saw that the announcements have only gone out this week. I think one of the challenges is that we do have some very high standards of conflict of interest. So in addition to kind of the regular standard of conflict of interest, where they can't have worked for a grantee, they can't be currently employed with a grantee or have immediate family members that are. We're also asking that hasn't happened within the last 2 years. And there's a contractor piece as well. So some of those have made some challenges because we have many grantees and it's hard to find those really active, engaged community volunteers that don't have that direct relationship. But I do think that the word is starting to get out.
I recall we have someone here to testify. Maybe we should take that now.
Unfortunately, he did not, he had joined the meeting earlier, and there was communication prior to the meeting letting him know that this agenda item would be after 4:30, but he did not return to the meeting to share his testimony. So I'll reach out to him again via email to see if he can submit his testimony in writing to us.
Thanks, Meg. I didn't mean to cut it off. I just want to make sure we got their perspective.
Yep.
Any other questions? Erica, your last point made so much sense, that the people that are most engaged are often going to be connected to the organization. So yeah, hopefully we can do some outreach to, I think, elders out there in the community that have a great lived experience over the years. That would be wonderful. Yeah, and tend to not be sometimes as active. I know you've already thought of that. Anyway, thanks for your outreach work that you're doing right now. Yeah. So
I
there's
think
another.
it's also, I'm
What's
sorry.
that?
Commissioner.
No, you
I
go.
was gonna say, I think it's also just people are feeling very stretched right now. So I'm just trying to make sure that we articulate all the ways that we're able to support them through this process of being part of the community council. So
Things are true. Any other questions? All right, great.
I'd
Yes.
kind of say just one last thing. I just wanted to thank my whole staff and just to really from the bottom of my heart, because we have no communications person right now, and they have been footing all of that. And so people have stepped up and volunteered to do all these things that are not getting done because we don't have a communications person or doing our best to do them. And then also Erica, because we have yet to hire the community engagement person, has really been working hard, not only doing her regular grant monitoring duties, but also doing that. So I just want to recognize that staff is really, like everyone that you are hearing about on the grantee side, people are doing more than one job often, and really put it together and have like just to run this meeting so nothing terrible happened while we were having it. So thank you for all of that.
For those of you that can't see that are tuned in, there's like love, there's celebration, like all sorts of reactions going on in this meeting at this moment. Thank you, staff. Not that we don't need a communications person, but you would never know based on what we experienced within the meeting today. But again, that wasn't saying that you don't need to recruit them. Yeah. So, hey, great meeting. Thanks for joining us today. Our next meeting will be in June 14th. Agendas will be sent to the Levy email list. If you would like to look at that on Facebook, it's at PDXKidsLevy, and post it on portlandchildren'slevy.org. We welcome your participation in these meetings. If you'd like to join the next meeting to comment on agenda items or the work of the Levy, please visit the site again, portlandchildren'slevy.org, or join our email list. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. And it was great to be with all of you committee members. It was, for me, just personally, it's just so nice it's just rewarding to be in this space and to hear about the amazing work for our kiddos and up into the teen years. It's really was a great meeting. I really appreciate it. Thank you, staff, again. And for the amazing testimony from our grantees. That was awesome. I'm so glad that's part of our agenda every quarter. Without that, I just hope everyone have a nice evening. Take care. Bye.
Everyone, thanks.